Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion of America's pro-Israel lobby, and joining me is Dan Fleshler, author of Transforming America's Israel Lobby, The Limits of Its Power and the Potential for Change. And from Jerusalem, we have Mitchell Barak, a former aide to Benjamin Netanyahu and CEO of the Israeli research firm, Kivun. Now, just before the break, we took a poll in our live station chat room asking, have the efforts of America's pro-Israel lobby made Israel more or less secure? Now, from our chat room, 25% of you said the pro-Israel lobby has made Israel more secure. 75% of you say it's made it less secure. Of course, the results aren't scientific, but I guess it also depends on how you define what makes Israel secure. Is it peace with its neighbors or military superiority over its neighbors? And let's get back to questions with a call from George, who's in Washington State here in America. George, what would you like to ask?
Yes, my question is, if Iran keeps posing a threat to the to, let's say, the Western worlds and the worlds that would powers that do not want Iran to have nuclear weapons, will America be forced in a position to give Israel more weapons and more money to protect itself?
Mitchell, what do you think of that?
I think that the Iranian threat right now is one of the major things on Israelis' minds. We've done a lot of polling on this subject over the past few years, and Israelis are very concerned with the Iranian nuclear capability, and it's a big concern for Israelis, and Israelis would like it stopped. That was one of the things that came up in the discussions between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama. I can't predict if that will mean that there will be more or less weapons given to Israel, but I think that Israel is capable to take care of the Iranian threat, given the okay to do that, but it's hard to see how it's going to play out.
Another call from the USA. Faisal, this time in Maryland, in America. Go ahead, Faisal.
Yeah, the question was talking about Israel's more secure, if it's more or less secure, but you know, Israel is so far superior to its immediate neighbors, at least in the region. Probably has the best military in the whole, one of the best in the whole world. Mm-hmm. And you know, I don't see Israel having any immediate threats. I think it's something that's overblown most of the time. Israel is more than capable of defending itself from anything.
Okay, let me put that down, Flesher. I mean, to what degree is that idea of a threat of Israel being in this being an island, isolated, surrounded by enemies, as it's often portrayed? To what degree is that used really to promote a better situation for relations between America and Israel, and perhaps less of a reality?
Well, I think it's a reality. I think your viewers may be disappointed to hear that. I think Mr. Barak and I probably agree that Israel is under threat from an Iranian, if Iran in fact develops nuclear weapons. Israel's under a threat from chemical weapons from Syria. There are serious problems. The rockets from Hamas are not an existential threat right now, but if those rockets are able to be developed from the southern Gaza Strip and who knows, from the range of mountains in the West Bank, then they'll hit the coastal plain in Israel. It's a mistake to think that somehow Israel is somehow immune from these threats because it's one of the world's most powerful military forces. That's not the case. The only question is, what should it do about it? What should its response be? Weapons development is something it has to do just from a defensive perspective, but are there other ways in which to sort of turn down the regional temperature that it has not taken up until now? I think Rabin tried to do that in the early days of his administration because he understood that the main threats to Israel were not from the Palestinians or his nearby neighbors, but from the periphery, from Iran and Iraq. And I think the same thing still holds. So the solution is not necessarily to simply say, well, Israel can take care of itself, we don't have to worry about it. That's not the case. Mm-hmm. But it is to say, can Israel take a different tack, and is it in America's interests to persuade it to take a different tack?
Mitchell, there's a lot of people saying that Barack Obama has surrounded himself with a lot of people with a strong pro-Israel stance. Some of his key staff, for example, Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Dennis Ross, for example. Shouldn't this reassure those who want a stronger line, a stronger pro-Israel line among lobbyists? Or do you feel perhaps it's a way for Barack Obama to shield himself from criticism for taking a stronger stance against some of Israel's policies?
Is that for me?
It's actually from,
I wouldn't say it's a way. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a way for him to shield himself, but I don't think at this point. Look, I think one of the things that Dan mentioned earlier on when we talked about pro-Israel lobby and what people's intentions, I think you know, both J Street and AIPAC and all these organizations are working in Israel's best interest. They just have a different way of going about it and a different agenda. So when you say that there are people surrounding President Obama who are pro-Israel, they are pro-Israel, and some of them have said that they believe that it's in Israel's best strategic, security, long-term interest to immediately have a peace agreement with the Palestinians, with the Syrians, with the Lebanese, and the entire region. And they will work their hardest to do that. Israel believes that it's also in its best interest to have those peace agreements, but I think that the debate is really how do you achieve that? Do you achieve it in the short term by pushing people, or do you achieve it in the long term?
Dan, here a question from our live station chat room that's coming from Sata Hamza in Winnipeg in Canada, which says, by confronting the Israel lobby, does Obama risk having problems getting elected for another term?
Well, that's the $25 billion question, isn't it? I think at this point he doesn't, because he has, again, the vast majority of American Jews support him, the vast majority of Democrats support him, and want to see this position, and he knows that. Rahm Emanuel, if is nothing else, is a very canny political animal. So is Hillary Clinton, and they understand the sentiments within both the American Jewish community and the American voters at large for doing something about this position. So that a confrontation, if it comes down to a settlement here or a settlement there, I don't think that's going to seriously undermine his re-election campaign. And nor do I think he's going to go much farther than that. I don't think he's going to ask Israel to compromise its core security requirements, nor should he. So I think everyone that's assuming there's going to be a drastic and dramatic confrontation between AIPAC and Obama, if you're hoping for that to happen, I don't think that's going to happen. I think there will be some nuisances and some squalls, but in the long run, it's not really up to the United States to determine whether the parties are going to come to an agreement. All we can do is apply certain kinds of leverage on one side and on the other.
Dan,
I think, again, Mr. Barak and I probably agree on that.
All right, Dan, well, I've got to stop you there, and thank you and Mitchell very much for joining us for this debate. Thank you.
Sure.
And thanks for being with us. On the next show, we look at history, meanings, and future of democracy. Considering the number of failing states around the world, is democracy fated for extinction? Don't forget, you can also download latest podcasts of the show from iTunes. This week, we'll feature my conversation with Iranian author Azad Nafisi, and you can follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. That's it from me and the team. We'll see you next time.